Hey guys, today's video is going to be about what my experience has been like thus far living and working in the Raleigh area full-time as a software engineer. I'm just going to use the term software developer and software engineer interchangeably. I guess my official title is software developer, but I don't really see any major distinctions, so I'll just use them interchangeably. The reason why I'm making this video is because going into the full-time job search, I didn't really expect to have Raleigh as one of the major places that I would be looking for a full-time software engineering role. But I will say that it's been a largely favorable experience, so I just wanted to share my thoughts here in a video form. There are a couple things to consider when watching this video. The first thing is that I graduated into the middle, or I guess beginning, of the pandemic. So I didn't really have a ton of job offers to choose from, which kind of, encouraged me to choose Raleigh. Since graduating from UNC, I knew that I would have a lot of friends that ended up in Raleigh, since Raleigh, Charlotte, and to an extent DC and New York are kind of like popular hubs for people from UNC to end up. That also means that my opinion of Raleigh right now is not necessarily indicative of what Raleigh is actually like non-pandemic, though I certainly have visited Raleigh a number of times during my undergrad experience. And also, I haven't really lived in many other places. I grew up in Orlando, and then I did spend a summer working from Durham. But other than that, I've only really lived in Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and Orlando. Going into the job search, I knew that Raleigh was generally considered like a top 10 US tech hub, but it wasn't that high up on my list since I was more interested in places like the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Austin, New York. But when it actually came time to pick a place and I started getting some job offers, I didn't get any job offers from one of those big four, or I don't know what they call it, FANG, I guess, big five. I don't know if that's a term, but I didn't get any job offers from those big tech places that have really, really good compensation. But the job offers that I did get in those areas certainly weren't twice as much as the salary that I was offered in this Raleigh area. So it was a pretty easy choice to just choose Raleigh, since the cost of living here is essentially half as much as the San Francisco Bay Area, and probably the same for New York. I think Austin is more competitive, but I don't have the numbers just off the top of my head. And I certainly think that's true. I've experienced it firsthand. I live in a pretty good location. I really like it here, and the total rent for a 3-bedroom, I have 2 roommates, and the total rent is $2,100, I believe. So it's definitely really cheap, and that's honestly even cheaper than Chapel Hill, and probably on par with Durham depending on the areas of Durham. So definitely very cheap, and considering if you're watching this, you're probably in the tech industry, you should have like a pretty good salary. I just entered as a pretty general new grad software developer, so certainly can live pretty comfortably here in Raleigh. Generally speaking, I think there's 2 main places to live if you're a young person in Raleigh. So the first is the area that I live, which is the Cameron Village area. I technically live like between NC State, Cameron Village, and downtown. So Cameron Village has tons of retail and restaurant options. NC State is obviously the university, and downtown has the nightlife options. The other place is the North Hills area, which, as you would imagine, is north of downtown. And that area seems to be a little bit more expensive and geared toward people in their late 20s and early 30s, but that's just my impression. I haven't really spent as much time there as I've spent down here because I live here, obviously. Unfortunately, neither of these places are walkable, so if you live in these areas, you're going to have a car if you really want to go anywhere, because most of the jobs, at least for the tech sector, are in the RTP area, and you're not going to be able to walk from these North Hills or Cameron Village neighborhoods to RTP. It's really just not possible at all. Obviously, having moved here in the middle of a pandemic, I can't speak too much about the nightlife, but I would imagine it is pretty fun. I have come here probably 3 times as an undergrad pre-pandemic, and I've always thought coming to Raleigh to go out in Glenwood is pretty fun. It's pretty standard, like mid-sized city going out. It's definitely nothing phenomenal. Like, I don't think there's any like clubbing scene with like EDM playing and stuff like that, but they're pretty standard, like fun bars to go. And there's Raleigh Beer Garden, which is definitely impressive since they just have so many beers on tap, and it's a good place to relax and hang out. Music scene wise, I think it's pretty good. You can pretty much get any act that you would want coming to here or Chapel Hill, and worst case, you can always drive to Chapel Hill, or you can always drive to Charlotte or Asheville, which is not that far away, for other acts that don't stop by the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. In terms of tech employment opportunities, there's tons of companies in the Research Triangle Park area. So IBM, Fidelity, Cisco, Credit Suisse. And then there are also a decent amount of tech opportunities in the downtown Raleigh and downtown Durham areas. Downtown Raleigh has Red Hat, Citrix, there's a small Docker office. Durham has Oracle, I know that, and Google is bringing a cloud office there, and there's also a small Google office in Chapel Hill as well. Something that surprised me at first about Research Triangle Park is that it's pretty spread out. So if you're in one building at one company's office, you're not going to be able to easily walk over to the next campus. It's not walkable at all, really. And I think they are trying to improve the cohesiveness of the Research Triangle Park area as a whole. Right now, in my experience, when I was interning in the Research Triangle Park area, I would just drive over into the campus of my one company, then drive out and then leave. But right now, they're working to improve that. The Research Triangle Park Foundation itself has a huge project underway with like hotels, apartments, retail space. It's called The Hub. And they're trying to revitalize it with like green space and try and make Research Triangle Park itself a good place to live. That's another downside of Research Triangle Park right now. It's in between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, which are, in my opinion, as a young person, the only real options to live. The neighboring suburbs are just that. They are suburbs, and they're pretty boring for like a young person, but they are great places to live, no doubt about it, and they're definitely really close to the Research Triangle Park area. It's just not something that I'm looking to do at this time in my life. Overall, my experience thus far working as a young tech professional here in Raleigh has been very favorable. Of course, there's the caveat that I have not had to make that daily commute to the Research Triangle Park region every day, but I'm sure the sentiment would still be very favorable. I really like the weather here. You get 4 seasons. It does get just as hot and humid as Florida though, just for not as long. Winters are relatively mild, and spring and fall are definitely beautiful here. I do like the culture in the sense that it's not overly tech. There's certainly a number of different industries here in the area, so it's not overwhelmingly tech like some might say about Silicon Valley. There are definitely some significant downsides. There's no real professional sport other than the Carolina Hurricanes, and I just don't really care about hockey. But the upside is there are 3 relatively competitive major colleges in the area, so I'm a pretty big college sports guy, so I don't really have that much of a want for more professional sports in the area. The other downside is that you have to drive everywhere, and we are landlocked, so some might say that's a benefit, that you can drive 3 hours to the beach and 3.5 hours to the mountains, but I would prefer to have some sort of water nearby. And lastly, income tax is a legit concern. I guess if you're going to work in California, you guys got it way worse, but there's income tax here in North Carolina, so if you were to work in Austin, that's something that you wouldn't have to pay, which is always nice. So those are just my closing thoughts. I tried to focus on specifically the tech opportunities as well as my perspective as like a young adult. So hopefully somebody found this useful.